Hello everybody, good evening. Welcome to the Scottish Rugby podcast brought to you by the Scottish Rugby blog. I am Cammy Black. Joining me, fresh from our live pod at the week, I say fresh, from we've got John Anderson. Good evening, John.
Good evening, Cammy. Yeah, I was fresh as a daisy. It was all good.
Yeah, and not so fresh, we've got Craig Manson. Good evening, Craig.
Good evening, all. How are we doing?
I missed the live pod at the weekend because unfortunately my youngest had COVID, so I couldn't try to make the journey. But from what I saw and what I heard, a roaring success, John.
Yes, it was a great day had by all. Big thanks to Porty for welcoming us in, and we've done our best to give them a wee bit of entertainment, and and it was quite funny. You know, there was a moment where we were all sitting there going, "Does this mean we're all in a rugby club at the same time? Have we crossed the threshold of a rugby club? Therefore, some criticism may not be applicable anymore."
Yeah. The boat race, though. I want to talk about this.
I was let down. I couldn't believe it.
You were let down badly. What was the thinking? Because the plan for the boat races, I was going to commentate, and I was hoping to do some pre and post match reactions, but obviously I wasn't there to do that. So I want to kind of pick this apart now, just to delay the inevitable, if nothing else. John, were you there? Were you captain?
Yes, loosely. I mean,
who made the decision? Well, who made the decision about the order in which you went?
You know, I think, Cameron, the decision was made by our good friend Tennants, because it has to be said that boat race took place quite late on in the day, and we were doing a running tally, and we were on to second hand comfortably by the second half of the Italy game. So I think Tennants played a part in determining who went first and last. There wasn't much strategy there by that point.
Yeah, but this way, look, so you went with Tennants as well.
No. See, that's the. See, I think I would have done better with Tennants, to be fair, especially if it had been one of the early ones, Craig, which we had to jab into life. I think we'd have been fine with that.
I'm not going to slander Porty's beer serving ability.
It was a great day, but there was a couple that could have had I've seen more life in a lot of different things. Actually, it wasn't the fizziest of lager beers.
All I remember is first of all, it was like, "What you having?" I said, "Well, I'm having a best, obviously, because that's the one that's going to go down easiest." And then I started setting the chairs out for the boat race, and all of a sudden, I'm sitting. I look down and there's only one chair left, and I'm the one right at the back. So
this is the big flaw that you put Ian and Craig at the back of the boat race. Now I would have thought that you start at a canter and.
I mean, did you see what those animals were doing beside us, though? If we'd started at a canter, we would have got drubbed 4-1. At least I managed to get one on the board.
And then I had a complaint on Twitter from Porty themselves saying that Craig, you and Ian got up without even finishing your drinks.
Well, the situation was both Ian and I were absolutely flabbergasted at how badly Johnny McGinty was drinking his pint. It was like he was having a Sunday afternoon lunch in the pub, and he was in the middle of eating his steak pie as well as drinking his beer. So we kind of got up and went, well, there's absolutely no use in wasting this beer by downing it when the game was over and done with before John even finished. So I then promptly sat down back into a wee culvert that we had, a lovely little seat with a lovely wee TV all there for us. It was great.
Nice corner.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden I was absolutely, torn asunder by the Porty boys saying, you need to down that pint, how dare you? And then I made a rookie mistake. And
yes, you did.
And I buffaloed the pint, which then all of a sudden another pint arrived saying, well, you're going to have to sort that out and drink it with the right hand.
Would you like to just tell the listeners and viewers who it was that grashed you in? Because snitches get stitches, Craig. Who grashed you in about buffaloing the pint?
Well, it's obviously going to be Johnny McGinty, but I actually thought it was you. I thought it was you first.
Wasn't me, no, it was McGinty. It was 100% McGinty.
Yeah.
Although it was me advocating for a second pint as punishment. So yeah.
And to be perfectly honest, those 2 pints went down, and they went down quick. So
you did. You done a good job. Yeah. If you
I was
kept
just
that for the
showing
boat
up.
race.
Well, I was just showing up missing.
Did you redeem yourselves in the quiz at least?
So the higher or lower was a podcast
That was
win.
us. We won, yeah.
And the quiz, a table from Porty won the quiz. Now, Johnny will tell you this story, I'm sure, when he comes on. There's accusations, wild accusations, that there was, I don't know, answers getting passed to a table that may or may not have won the quiz in the end up.
How would you pass some of those? How did you pass answers for those questions I came up with?
Well, I was in charge, wasn't I?
Well, to be perfectly honest, you put the wrong person in charge for that piece, and he was too busy talking to people that he quite liked and started talking to them and showing them the answers. That is what the accusations were. And to be perfectly honest, they're not accusations. It's fact.
Completely false, fake news, completely unfounded.
Did the table was the table that won a ladies' table, Craig? Is that what you're saying?
I wouldn't like to throw around accusations or fake news, but yes.
I feel like I'm being thrown heavy
well,
under
listen,
a bus here.
it was the first time we've done anything like that, and clearly it went down a storm at Porty, and we've had feedback that Porty really enjoyed themselves. If you have a rugby club and you want us to come, internationals, I think it probably work best during an international window. Give us a shout. Quite happily come and host today, do some quizzes, some fun and games. Down at your rugby club, so drop us a line if you're interested in that. You can watch us though every week live on YouTube. Although we won't be in physically with you, we are there virtually on YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. You can also download the podcast on audio format afterwards on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere you can get your podcasts. And we've got Patreon too, patreon.com/Scottish Rugby Podcast, where for £3 a month, you get a bonus weekly episode as well. This week on the podcast, we're doing 2 episodes this week for the main pod and the bonus Patreon as always. So this episode we're doing today, we're going to be reviewing the men's Six Nations. The episode we're recording tomorrow and will be live tomorrow. We are previewing the women's Six Nations. So we will hopefully have a special guest for that that Craig has arranged. So we're very excited about that. So have 2 experts on women's rugby, or 1.5. Craig, I'll count you as a half.
Yeah, I was going to say I would be more comfortable with a half or maybe a quarter.
Yeah. So we wanted to kind of we could have done it in the same pod, but it felt right to give the Women's Six Nations its own space and time to talk about it. And also, there's a lot to talk about, as always. And Shall we start with the Swally Six?
I mean, it seems to always come back to the Swally Six. So yes, that seems. I think that seems like a reasonable starting point.
So this came out on the Friday after we'd recorded the podcast on BBC that 6 players from Scotland had left the team hotel after the Italy game when they were back in Edinburgh and gone for a drink. We know, I think, because people saw them there, it was the Why Not nightclub in Edinburgh, which from the reviews I read today, I can tell you why not. Just read the TripAdvisor reviews of it.
No accounting for taste, Cam.
Yeah, clearly. So 6 players went out. They were all disciplined. We had Stuart Hogg, Finn Russell, Darcy Graham, Sione Tuipulotu, Sam Johnson, and I feel like
Ali Price.
And Ali Price. There's been the leak story is right, and this circulated on social media that the rumor is more players were going to go out but were dissuaded from doing so, and some decided to go out anyway. 2 of the players stayed out very late in the evening, and one of the players allegedly did not then turn up for the training the following day. However, we can't verify any of that. Nothing more other stories come out, but it's not, even if it's just the fact that your captain and I've said, and two senior players, if we count Ali Price and Finn Russell as within the senior leadership group, Craig, have gone out and either they've misunderstood we don't know whether they've misunderstood what they've been told, whether they broke some sort of team protocol that they clearly should have known, whether or not they just fancied a beer, thought they could go for one, and then found out they couldn't later on the telephone and were disciplined for it. We don't know exactly what's happened, but it's not a great... The confusion itself is not a great look.
No, and this is the thing is, though, I find it very, very difficult to say they were confused, because as far as I'm aware, the captain and the leadership group set the rules, and or at least are in the conversation with the SRU and with the coaching staff. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't think there's any confusion. I think and this is personal view, and I will stand up here and say I was wrong if we find out ever any more information. But as far as I'm concerned, to go, I think it's been let's just do it. I'm. It's not that I'm on the fence, or that I'm not going to try and defend him in any way. There's two. I think it's, especially with the Hamish Watson issue that we had with him catching COVID, and then not being able to play against Italy. Now, okay, it was against Italy, and then there was new blood going to be blooded, hopefully at that point in time, and this, that, and the other. But still, if those six had gone out and any more, and three or four of them caught COVID, maybe we may have got a better result. I don't know. It's that's the reason these things are in place. On the other side of things, I do seem to think that the coaching staff and the leadership group and the SRU are getting the camps slightly wrong, and it doesn't seem to be a happy place to be at this moment in time. And I think it's looking more like Eddie Jones's England than it is Ireland's. Ireland seem to be having a lot more fun than Scotland and England at the moment. So, and France as well. So that's the kind of juxtaposition for me. I've talked a lot there. Sorry, but
no. It's all coming. I mean, I think that the Stuart Hogg thing is worrying for me, John, because I think the attitude in not just the Ireland press conference but the Wales press conference as well. It's there. It's on YouTube. The way that he spoke to the Scottish Rugby Union media rep when he thought he was on mute was really... I know they just lost a game of rugby, but it was kind of bored. It was completely unacceptable the way he spoke to him. And then when he left the press conference against Ireland, he muttered under his breath, I'll not miss this. By all accounts, was very short with the journalists who were there to ask legitimate questions. That's the job. I mean, they're not doing the job if they're not going to ask about why were you in a pub, or and the fact the SRU tried to tell people we're not going to answer questions about that. Well, that's like a red rag to a bull with any journalist, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's we've all been part of those conversations with the SRU, and it's often quite funny to see what they try to control and what they try, what they still have zero concept of you cannot control everything. And if you put, the deed was done, right? Your captain has went out in the lash for whatever reason with his mates midway through a tournament. Of course you're going to get questions on it. I think I would go a step further and say, actually, I think, and there's comments on this, but I think Stuart Hogg, I've mentioned this a few times, I don't think he looks terribly happy, like in anything he's doing just now. Even when he's at Exeter, he doesn't look like he's comfortable. Finn Russell for Scotland has not looked comfortable. I wonder if there's wider issues. I think the camp doesn't look like a great place to be. I was reading today, now again, not to justify the behaviour in the slightest, but I was reading today, and again, completely unsubstantiated, but may or may not be the case. It was Ali Price's 50th cap against Italy, and there was rumours that it wasn't marked in the usual 50 cap way, and that may have contributed to the guys, all of whom are former Warriors, with the exception of Darcy Graham, or current Warriors, may have contributed to them saying, well, let's go and do this properly because it's your 50th cap. If that's the case, that I just think, again, we talked about this first time round with this Finn Russell gate yet again. The communication between management, communication between players, but ultimately the comms coming out to the fans, there has to be a transparency here with this. To come out and say they've been internally disciplined, it just doesn't cut it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's it, isn't it? It's the story then is, well, if it's a misunderstanding about what team protocols are, then why have they been disciplined?
Yep.
Yeah.
If it's not a misunderstanding and it's a breach of team protocol, it's a breach of team protocol, in which case you've got serious issues in camp. And the fact that, I mean, Brodie Duncan's on YouTube with a comment saying, it's not a good look that this was leaked in the first place. And the further leak that, was circulating on social media is allegedly, from a player who was in the camp as, and sending a voice note round your mates on WhatsApp, knowing what's going, you must know it's going to get forward hundreds of times.
Of course.
Yeah.
So the fact that the leak has come from in camp also would indicate that there's a lot of unrest. And I was reading the Mark Palmer things in the, piece in the Times, and he was saying, Gregor Townsend is not well liked within the Scotland setup. Now, you don't have to be liked as a manager. In fact, it's not necessarily a great attribute and not something you really need to aspire to. But I think if you need to have the respect, and that's what I wonder. I wonder whether or not it's one thing not liking or getting on with your coach or your manager, but it's another thing, Craig, not to respect your coach, and that's what this kind of smacks of a little bit.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, and this is people have been talking. Well, in fact, it's your captain's gone out and done this. He's meant to be leading the team and leading the group and setting examples. You're then your vice captain, your second in command. Sorry, I take that back because I think it was Grant Gilchrist was vice captain. But if you're talking about, when you speak about just before the tournament, when we're talking about if Stuart Hogg finishes up as captain, who would be the next captain? Ali Price comes into the conversation, and he's out. Whether it's a confusion or whatever it is, he's out doing this as well. So I think it just the lack of respect, never mind the coaches, never mind the staff at the SRU, the lack of respect to the Scotland fans, I think, is quite dramatic. And I think, if I was, and I think we talked about it actually at the live pod, if it was me, he wouldn't have played. Our captain wouldn't have played.
Yeah, that then comes down to, and obviously we'll mention again the conundrum regarding selection. Admittedly, this time round, Hastings was in camp, so there was the option to say, do you know what, let's drop Finn, let's drop Hogg, let's drop Price, let's do it properly. If you're going to set discipline, put it this way, the only person who it looked like had been punished was Finn Russell by being dropped to the bench. But again, there was an expectation that potentially could have happened anyway. So you kind of come out of it going, well, you've let all these guys play. You've put Hogg up against the press. He's behaved terribly. What have you actually achieved as a manager? What outcome have you got? You got scuffed. You then talked about the usual nonsense that we hear every single time about we're learning, building blocks, blah, blah, blah. We'll take the lessons. We'll do this. We'll do that. We played well. This was our best performance of the tournament. Well, we got gubbed against a team that are in our World Cup group. And if they hadn't been, we all watched the game. I've watched the game back. We were grimly hanging on for quite a lot of that game. And if Ireland had 5% more accuracy, like they would normally have, it could have been 50 points. So to say that was our best performance of the tournament, well, that's just saying how far behind we are against the second seed in our World Cup group with a year to go.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Johnny McGinty's joined us. Good evening, Johnny. Hello.
Hello, good evening.
we've already covered the fact that you you snitched on Craig during the live pod to about a mate for when he held his pint in the wrong hand.
Yeah, well, I mean, someone was going to spot it, weren't they? So,
well, speaking of losing respect for people,
that's my teammate and my captain, by the way. Teammate and my captain.
Yeah, and as a teammate and captain, it's my duty when I catch someone drinking with the wrong hand, like you're doing right now, to point it out.
Or is his camera making it look like he's backwards just now?
It's backwards, that's what it is, Unfortunately, the Gilbert ball behind me is spelled correctly, but anyway.
Yeah. So speaking of losing respect for people, Johnny, can Gregor Townsend come back from this? That's the big question, because it felt like before they kind of all came out of being out on the lash, it felt like, I don't know, we'll have the game against Hamilton, we'll probably lose, and you'll have another chance to regroup. But this feels like there's something else going on here other than just it's taking time for the new attack coach and defence coach to gel together.
Yeah, and it's the fact that it keeps happening. We had the big blowout with him and Finn in the 38 All Calcutta Cup game, where allegedly at halftime, Finn used some quite industrial language and said, "I'm just going to do it the way I want to do it this half." Then we had it with him and Finn again when he had his extra beer and he got sent home, and didn't get sent home, got in trouble and then chose to go home. And it's now happening again. He's obviously there's just something going on where he hasn't got full control of the team, and he hasn't got full control of his star players. And the more often it happens, the less likely he is to survive it, I think.
Yeah. I mean, where is Stuart Hogg lost the captaincy in your mind, John? Because he has for me. I don't see there's a way back for Stuart Hogg now.
Yeah, I think we talked about it prior to it all coming out anyway, that actually, again, we continue to question Hogg's leadership. And I think, without the incident, I think he should lose the captaincy anyway, because I think, he's been struggling with it. It's not made him a better player. Far from it. It's made him a significantly poorer player. So I think there is an element of he should lose it anyway, but then this is your full exclamation mark, multiple dots, and making sure we've crossed all those T's. He should have it, and it should be. The frustration is we're now, for those of you listening, this is Wednesday night. Obviously they would take time to just have a bit of a debrief afterwards, but I think for me, with everything that went on, it should have happened Monday morning. If we were in the same position and that had happened in our jobs, we would be getting spoken to on the Monday morning.
Yeah. So this is it. This is it, isn't it now? Because there's an opportunity, I suppose, Craig, that the next run out for Scotland is the summer tour. So there's a convenient thing of, we're going to rest Finn and Hoggy anyway because it's the summer tour to Argentina and try and blood some new players and try and sweep it all under the carpet to the autumn. But that's just, it's just kicking the ball into the long grass, really.
Yeah, because they were going to do that last year, weren't they? They were going to bring all these new players in to try and blood them for the World Cup and give them international rugby, etc., and give all the guys that are away in the Lions tour some time and all this, that, and the other. To go back to an original one of your points just before, I find it really difficult to say that Tooney has to manage his star players, because as far as I'm concerned, they're being paid a hell of a lot of money by the SRU to do their job. And yes, you have Tooney and his team around there are there to sell the message and to ensure that these guys are playing in a certain way that they want them to. But I'm sorry, but I don't see Gregor Townsend should be phoning up Stuart Hogg while he's out in the piss and saying, "You better get your arse back here, or you're going to be dropped or whatever." That's Stuart Hogg shouldn't be out on the piss in the first place because he's set the rules up. So, as far as I'm concerned, I'm with you guys. The captaincy side of things, in my opinion, he shouldn't have been playing against Ireland in the first place. Captaincy stripped, and then thanks very much, because there are players out there who have done far less and have had the captaincy taken off them. So I think as far as I'm concerned, we've got profession. If I had done what those guys have done in my job, I would have been fired by now.
There's an interesting, but there's, I suppose there's an interesting question though, and I think this kind of goes to the heart of the problem I think there is within the Scotland setup about the control that Gregor Townsend has and maybe expects to have over the players. What constitutes in work time? Do you know what I mean? You admittedly you're away with the national squad, but is it too much to say on the day, the day they get back from Italy, they've got plenty of prep time ahead of them. They're away from their homes and their families. If I was away for work and I went to have a pint in the hotel at night, I'd have a pint in the hotel at night, and I wouldn't expect my boss to say anything about it because it's my time. And I think I know they're elite athletes and slightly different. I guess maybe if they feel like there's too much control being exerted over them and they don't feel they've got a way of voicing that, there's a problem. And I think it's 50-50. I'm not siding with the players or Gregor Townsend, but I can see why Gregor Townsend would be annoyed at them breaching team protocol, but I can see why if the team protocol is a load of bobbins and you disagree with it, but you've got no way of raising the grievance, you'd go out on the lash.
Yeah, but they're grown men. Yeah. And it's like, and as they've got tongues in their heads. They are supposed to, I'd be very, very surprised if they aren't asked by Tooney to set up their own rules and regulations before a camp starts, so that they can, because you involve these as a team, you involve the team in setting the rules, because you then confirm that you're going to get full everyone sticking to it. I think the other thing though, and this is one thing I will say, and I'm not just attacking the players and just saying it's all their fault. From what I've picked up little bits and pieces, and they may be completely wrong, but I believe they were told that there was going to be some beers on the plane home, and there was going to be some bits and pieces happening for them, and it didn't materialise. And that's why they've decided to go out on, or whatever they've decided. You said that it was Ali Fais's 50th, and they decided to go and celebrate it properly. Now, that is part of a team bonding thing. I would have made sure that would happen as a coach, because you want, I'm not trying to be everyone's friend, but I'm actually, wanting to say to the guys, well, you did well today, you won today, it was Ali Price's 50th, let's have some beers together, let's bond as a team. So I can see what's going on in the background. My problem is the fact that, protocols were set. They didn't get what they wanted, so they said, well, screw it, we're going to do it ourselves. And that, I feel, is just a lack of respect, A, to the staff, B, to the SRU, but the main thing is to the fans, because if they go out and do what they want, then when it's quite obvious, one of the players involved had decided to do what he wants on the pitch himself as well, and it costs us points. So it's a difficult thing.
I think that's it. And
the problem is,
I was going to say that, Joe. There is a sense that it was hard to tell with Scotland during this tournament. I think, and we spoke about this pretty much every week. Is we couldn't see what Scotland were trying to do in attack or defence, and that's a major problem. And I think that probably goes to the heart of what I guess this incident is a kind of microcosm of wider problems within the squad. If the players don't know what they're supposed to be doing on the pitch, they can't execute it. They looked confused at times. There is the I'm just going to do it myself attitude. And again, as Craig said, that cost us the weekend when Hogg didn't pass a clear pass. So that to me is almost, I'm not sure that's something that can be solved easily.
No, I don't think so. And I think it's a bit frustrating, because we have had times where you see Scotland clicking in attack and look absolutely terrifying. But now that just seems to all have disappeared, and nobody's on the same page. Players who we're relying on are I think, get the feeling that they're being relied on, and so then they start to push things that maybe aren't on, and it crumbles from there. And I've said it about Hoggy before. The problem with Hoggy is that if he tries to force something and it doesn't happen, he gets more and more frustrated, and he tries to force more and more, and then less and less is happening for him. And it's just, you can see that frustration.
Yeah. And then, John, Wales lost to Italy this weekend, and so that makes us at home, and somehow that makes us losing to Wales at home even worse.
Well, it's interesting because I said at the time, and obviously we've got a couple of Welsh boys who tune into this, but I said after the Wales game that was one of Scotland's worst results of recent times, and that actually it was a massive step backwards because that Welsh team are poor. And we defended it at the time by saying, oh, but the Millennium Stadium, Principality Stadium factor, it's the 16th man, blah, 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 blah. Italy showed just how poor that Wales team are, because Italy are not great, let's be honest. And they took that Wales team to the cleaners. I should have won more comfortably. They had the best of the game by a long way. And yeah, it does. It puts in... We can talk around everything. Like, obviously we try to analyse things. We look at things objectively. We try to figure out what players are trying to do, what coaches are trying to do. Ultimately, back to the key point, results-based business. Scotland's results have not been good enough. There is no clear plan. There's no coherent attack. Defence has been extremely porous. We are ill-disciplined on and off the park. We are nowhere near as good as we think we are. And this is the outcome. And Italy beating Wales put that into absolute stark contrast. That was obviously the biggest game. Italy are always kind of scrabbling around for victories. If we're not careful, we are going to be back there a couple of years from now, easily, because that's how poor we're playing this season.
And it's strange, Craig, because I don't understand how we can go from having the meanest defence in the Six Nations to having the second worst defence in the Six Nations after Italy. Look at the final table, and it's, we've shifted 120. We've conceded 121 points, and the next one after us are Wales on 104.
Yeah.
And again, it's not. It has to be systems because to be fair, I think the forwards have probably had an all right Six Nations for Scotland.
Yeah, I think it's all the stats that have been going around have shown our forwards to be in a pretty good place at this moment in time. Even our line-out even operated against Ireland, and worked quite well when we had line-outs. I don't know whether either Chris Harris has lost his touch or people aren't listening to him. He's a defensive leader, and I don't know if people aren't listening to him. Obviously, he got taken off when he was against France, and with the head injury, and the defence went to pieces after that. It seemed to be working okay up until that point. The other thing we have, is that we seem to have a fairly good middle period. When we're in the midsection of the field, we can move quite far forward. But when it gets to the 22, that's when we seem to lose our edge. And there's only one team that's actually benefiting from Scotland's demise, and that's Edinburgh Rugby, because it's Mike Blair that's moved on, and that's where the issues have. That's where the attack issues have gone. Because it seems to we've stumbled ever since. And if you look at the way that the players have responded to Mike Blair in the Edinburgh camp, was Mike Blair the link between the players and Tooney? And was he the guy that put the arm round Finn Russell and says, "Didn't listen to him about that? It'll be fine. Let's just do this." And tell him that it's his, I don't know, and tell him it's his plan, but actually it's ours. There's all these different things that could belong. I really do think that he's the link. link man that has gone, and he's the attack coach that we need. So it's a really difficult one. It's a really
you think
difficult
about it
one.
as well. Blair played at both Glasgow and Edinburgh, spent time around both clubs, is well known around both clubs, knows all of these players. So I think you're absolutely right. He's an intelligent guy as well. Slightly different personality to Gregor Townsend. Slightly less abrasive's the wrong word. Like Blair,
well, you can see he's very dry. He's got a very dry sense of humour.
Yeah.
Because you hear him on the podcast and stuff. He's just he's a very much kind of you get what you get with you know. He's quite honest, I think, in the way he kind of comes across on podcasts. That the corporate ones.
Yeah.
So you say you're going to give him back for the good of country, then, Craig?
Well, I'm not at that point just yet.
You might not have a choice quite soon, pal.
Well, the thing is, I honestly don't. Honestly, if we're going to ask the question right now, I honestly don't think it's time to replace him. I think we need to go to the World Cup, but because I honestly don't think. I think it's a. I feel that. We're talking about a couple of bits and pieces about how do we stop Hoggy doing what he's doing? How do we stop Finn doing what they're doing? Well, we drop them, and we deal. Ireland was a dead rubber for us. It really wasn't a huge, a massive game for us because everybody that was talking online, everyone that was talking about the game thought we were going to get beat. So take that opportunity to drop them and say, go and lick your wounds and then come back after the summer and see if you've really got the fire in your belly still. Exeter did it, and so
it's not helped him though at Exeter. He's not exactly been particularly last wee while. He's been absolutely honking.
I think he came back and worked well, but then he's kind of gone off the boil again.
The problem I've got with the summer tour is it's a summer tour. And I think unless you are going to take, I think if he's going to take the likes of Hamish Watson and he's going to take Ali Price, if he's going to take a proper squad of senior players away on tour and drop Hogg and Finn, for example, fine, because I think that sends a message.
Yeah,
I don't think it sends a message doing what I think will probably happen, which is saying you're not coming on summer tour, but I wouldn't have taken you anyway, Johnny, which is kind of what I think we would have expected to happen over the summer anyway.
Yeah, and I actually think this year, because of the way things have fallen and because there wasn't a tour last year and stuff, that actually there are some senior players who might benefit from going on this tour. So we might see this being different to what our summer tours traditionally look like, and then we might see the fact that Finn and Hogg are there as being a bit more of a statement than it normally would be. But it does. I wouldn't have expected them to have been going on this tour no matter what happened. So it's not exactly a punishment for them to not go.
Yeah.
If any of our lines are on that summer tour, that's a mistake.
Yeah.
We're a year out from a World Cup. We've got guys who've literally played a full year of rugby by the time that tour comes round. They've not had a break. If you take Stuart Hogg, you take Finn Russell, you take any of those Lions players on that tour, it is gross mismanagement, but it does remove the possibility of a sanction. So it's a rock and hard place. He would have to come out and say, I'm dropping you, and it's not because you're a Lion, it's because you are one of the beer hound six.
What are we bringing back the Toonsday clock then, John?
I mean, someone's worked hard on this, so yes, of course we are.
Insight, foresight, more sight. The clock on the wall reads midnight.
That's the new Toonsday clock jingle there.
The other thing that's literally just occurred to me is if we're talking about not sanctioning them for the summer tour, then the next thing that comes along becomes sanctioning them for the autumn tests.
Yeah.
Now, what happens then when Tooney says he's sanctioning them for the autumn tests and somebody from upstairs comes down and says, listen, mate, we need to sell out Murrayfield 4 times in autumn. And if you're not playing Finn Russell and Stuart Hogg, there's a very good chance that we're not going to sell it out 4 times. So actually, no, you're not going to drop them.
And then you're not going to drop them for a Six Nations because, again, it's a results-based game. I think I would go right back to Craig's point, and actually it's leading back into the Toonsday clock. So obviously I was a big advocate for the Toonsday clock first time round. I think it's his time. I genuinely think, and do you know what? There's precedent there. If we don't fire Gregor Townsend now, right, and he's got lots of money in the bank with regards to this, but I think there's coaches that would fit quite well into Scotland's setup just now who would bring fresh perspective. If we don't fire him now, we write off the World Cup, right? So that we're literally just writing off 18 months of rugby for me, because you don't pull out that escape act twice. I don't think there's a way back here. Looking at the schedule, we've got 11 games from now to the World Cup. 11 games. I don't think Townsend is going to be able to get what he needs out of those senior players in that 11 games, because I think the respect's gone. And to use the old soccer phrase, I think he has lost the dressing room. I think it's gone. And, every coach has got a shelf life. No coach has ever coached in infinitum. So he's gone. It's time. So Mike Blair, Dan McFarlane.
Well, that's how I was going to say who. I mean, well,
Dan Wilson.
Batter in. Feel free.
Yeah, please.
You've got a prospect of Jim. You see, this is the issue I have. Is that I completely agree with what you said, John, and I don't have a problem with jetting a coach this far up from World Cup. I mean, South Africa did it with Razzie. When Razzie, I'm not saying Scotland are going to get a coach in and win the World Cup, but they did it and they turned it around quite quick.
France,
a good coach will come in. We've got we're not asking. It's not a case of a coach having to come in and build from scratch like someone like Vern Cotter had to do.
Yep.
We've got the squad. We've got a good core squad there. You're asking someone to come in and get that squad to play its best rugby. The problem, the thing that worries me though, is who, because it's too early for Mike Blair. It's certainly too early for Pete Horne.
Mm-hmm.
The Dan McFarland from Ulster is an option, but he's done a good job at Ulster, but he's not. He was former Scotland. Was he former?
It would be a similar progression to what Townsend done. And, he was a specialist coach with Scottish national setup. He went to Glasgow. He's now been head coach at Ulster for quite some time. He is tearing up trees there, to be fair.
And he turned Ulster on quite quickly.
Very quickly. Like, he's a great manager. The Glasgow guys talk so highly about the impact he had at the club. He's got a relationship with the SRU. I just, that was the name I was reading earlier on, because again, I was thinking, who is the option? Like, who do you go for? And it's almost like Townsend was the best of the worst options, but then that name popped up, and it was like, do you know what? No, if they could attract him away from the IRFU just now, they should do it. They should do it tomorrow.
What's your take on it, Johnny?
Well, see how we're in Argentina in the summer anyway. Can we not just put a bag over Michael Cheika's head and drag him on the plane?
Michael Cheika. That's almost as bad as the suggestion of getting Scott Johnson back.
Michael Cheika makes a difference to a team for a year or two.
Short period, yep. You'd be looking at a guy to come in, have an immediate impact for the World Cup, do a season, and then move on.
I know what would have a major effect on the team with the World Cup, and that's getting putting these boys out to pasture for a little while and bringing some youth through. We've got Adam Hastings there, who everyone has moaned and groaned, saying that he's wonderful and he's this, that, and the other. You've then got Blair Kinghorn behind him. You've got Blair Kinghorn that could go to 15. You've got several players that could come in. Kyle, is it Kyle Rowe? Who can play 15 as well. You've got all these players that can come in. Ali Price, you can put him out to departure. We've got George Horn, we've got Ben Vellicott, we've got Ben White.
You've got plenty. We've got the players, but I just don't necessarily know. And we've talked about some of those players before, Craig. I'm not necessarily sure that Townsend's getting the best out of them.
Yeah, that may be true, but we're talking about getting rid of a coach who has the highest win percentage of most of the Scotland coaches that I've known. And he's done a very, very good job over a large period of time with the Scotland squad. And we're getting rid of him because 6 players in the Scotland team, A, think they're better than a lot of people, and B, decide to go out on the piss. and say, "No, screw your rules."
But it's not that, is it? Because it's been a poor. I think it's just that points to deeper problems in the squad, and that has to rest with the manager or the coach in this case.
I think that's just a symptom of a lot of other things that are going on. I don't think that's the reason to get rid of him.
I mean, the fact is shipping the 22 points against Italy with some absolutely criminal defending. Even the Ireland game, that Josh van der Fleer try, Johnny Gray was way out of the line. I don't even know. He'd just gone for a walk. I don't know where he was off to. But left a massive hole in the defence. They just don't look like they know what they're supposed to be doing or where they're supposed to be, and that's the worry for me. And if it's whether it's on the park or where I'm supposed to be in the park or whether I'm supposed to be in a pub or not, it's the same issue, and it's been the same issue since probably since the England game, really. Because as much as we all like, oh, that was brilliant backs against the wall stuff, probably look at where England ended up. Actually, we were probably just lucky.
In fact, we relied on a penalty try to have to beat them.
Yeah, I think. Don't get me wrong. I'm just as disappointed with what's going on. I'm not sitting here putting my flag in the ground saying I'm Tooney's biggest fan. In fact, when I'd had quite a few beers in me, I don't think I was very many people's fan within the Scotland squad. But I think we're just at this point of. We're looking at moving quite quickly on something that may have been brewing for some time, but I think it's fixable. And I think we're maybe looking at throwing the baby out with the bathwater right at this moment in time.
I think had it just been Finn Russell, or had it just been a player or two players or a couple of junior members of the team or whatever, doing what they've done, I think that you could then speak to, well, Finn's had issues before, or these players, they've not been in camp all that often. They maybe just didn't know the rules, or, they've obviously chosen to disrespect the team. They've not got that relationship. The fact is, Stuart Hogg and Townsend have worked together for years. You're talking, well, the whole of Stuart Hogg's professional career, they've worked together. To be able to disrespect someone who is your boss, he is the boss, to be able to turn around to them and say, do you know what? Nah, I don't really agree with you. I'm just going to do what I want.
Wasn't he one of the players who was involved in the 2-beer rule that kicked off when Finn got in on last time?
He was one of the leadership group who apparently implemented this rule as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult, and I take your point, Craig. I think you're absolutely right. We shouldn't be necessarily throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I completely take that. But my point is, every coach has a shelf life, and there does come a point where change is required. Now, unfortunately, that might be a year out from a World Cup, a la South Africa. It may also be that we go to a World Cup with Townsend, we manage to get out of our group, we get, a quarter-final, we lose the quarter-final in a tight game or whatever. I still think it's time for him to go. I think your shelf life as a coach with this group of players, having literally worked with them all, the guys that are in that team now, the leaders there, he's been with them at Glasgow, he's been with some of them, like when he was attack coach at Scotland as well, just from they were kind of on the periphery of the squad. He's literally coached these guys his whole career. I think that's too much, and you need a fresh perspective, we look stale. That's it. For me, we look stale. We look bored of what we're doing. And with that comes that lack of organisation, that lack of control, and just lack of innovation, which has been the hallmark of Townsend's era. And it's time. It's gone.
Well, look, last time we did the Toonsday clock, he turned it round and we became amazing for about a period of 18 months. So who knows? We have the same
exactly. We are challenging him to do this. I would love nothing more, but I just don't think we've got 2 escape acts in us.
Let's have some, I want you all to give me a positive each from the Six Nations from a Scottish perspective, if you can. John.
Oh, coming to me first.
I know, I'm putting you under pressure.
So Rory Darge making his debut. More than deserved. The guy I feel most sorry for is Tom Gordon in all this, because Tom Gordon has been tearing up trees at Glasgow, and then he's he got the opportunity to kind of come in as first choice 7, but Rory Darge signed, and it's like, oh yeah, so here's a generational talent, 3 years younger than you, and yeah, unlucky, mate. But Darge getting his cap, brilliant. I think he was a standout again in the couple of games he's played for Scotland. Looks manor born. Brilliant. Can't wait to see him in the back row with a vast array of different people. I think you've also got a talent over at Edinburgh who, if Darge can continue to play 6, the future is bright. Because if you get Connor Boyle at 7 and Darge at 6, that is magnificent.
Well, you could take Edinburgh will take Tom Gordon if Glasgow didn't want them. So normally
we've got enough back rowers. Thank you very much. I'm still reeling from the taking Henry Purgos.
Craig, positive from you.
For me, in general, the forwards. We've got a strong forward pack. They're providing, and no matter, out of the 6 nations, what I would take is that our forwards have been providing very, very good platforms for the ball. So our lineouts, our scrummages have been very, very good. Our ruck defence seems pretty good as well. I'm quite happy with it when we're involved in it. The greatest showman has to be stood up there and pointed to as well. He's been a revelation throughout the 6 nations. So yeah, our forwards have been good.
Yeah, Johnny.
Yeah, Rory Darge was my first thought, and then the forwards were my second thought, because I've said for years that I don't think Scotland have got abrasiveness in the forwards, and that is one thing that does seem to be coming through with the likes of Darge. But I guess I'll stick to my own area. Darcy Graham is back to what we know and love from Darcy Graham.
Absolutely.
He was phenomenal. Just
breaking team protocols the way he breaks tackles. Keep going, Johnny.
Funnily enough, he's sidestepped quite a lot of the flack for it as well. It seems like
he definitely has, hasn't he?
No, he was brilliant, and brilliant in almost every facet as well. Made loads of tackles. He was 80-something% tackle completion, which for an outside back is pretty good. Gave away very little penalties, very few turnovers, which you can't say about anybody else who played in the back 3, I don't think, at all this tournament. And was just, he was great. I hope he keeps it up.
Yeah.
Good. I was impressed with it. Sorry, I just
have
to say this on open mic, because Hamish Watson now has not missed a tackle in 3 Six Nations.
That's right. Yeah.
He's about 70. He was 70 from 70. Yeah, 353 since he last missed one.
Yeah,
ridiculous.
Just unbelievable.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
Absolutely phenomenal. Okay, well, it's nice to end on a positive anyway. We'll be back tomorrow, and obviously we'll be back next week. We'll be back tomorrow with our TikTok Six Nations preview. Be the normal roster plus a special guest. We'll be back next week with the normal podcast. We'll have a review of the Calcutta Cup game for the women's game. Is the Calcutta? Did they play the Calcutta Cup? Or is it a different name? The trophy?
I think it's a different name. I'd have to.
We'll have to check. Anyway, the England-Scotland game. We'll review the England-Scotland game. We'll look at. I'll work that out for tomorrow when I'm doing the preview pod. We'll have to. Should know these things really. So yes, we'll be back for that. If you are watching live as a patron, if you hang around, we'll be back with the bonus episode. If you are a patron, then you can hear it as a separate download. For the moment, though, it is goodbye from me and goodbye from Johnny, Craig, and John.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
I'll bring in Stuart shortly.
Mobile disco here.
Hi everyone, we're good to go for Stuart Hogg's post-match press conference.
Hi Stuart, can you put your finger on what happened in that game?
You're on mute now. I'm on mute. No, you're all good. They can hear you now.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Hi Stuart, can you put your finger on what happened in that game, where it slipped away?
Yeah, we cost ourselves a game. At times, I am on mute.
Can you hear Stuart, everyone? Yep.
Yeah.
It's connected.